Yo, what's up guys, it's Nick and welcome to the third and final video about the Galvanic Shards Gemling Legionnaire on my channel. If you have a look at my previous videos, you can see that I've been playing this basically old league, starting off as a Witchunter, moving on to Gemling. We've made a lot of changes, we've done a lot of testing, so this video will just be an all-in-one guide just to wrap everything up, let you know the things we've tried, the things we haven't tried, and what we've ended up settling with on our current version of the build. So just so that you guys know, this build can be used to complete all content. I have killed Arbiter, I've killed T3 Zesht, I've killed the T3 Expedition boss, the T3 Ritual boss, so you can absolutely use this and kill all bosses in the game. The build is really fun to play, but there is a couple of disclaimers that I'd like to make just before you decide if this is something you'd be interested in. So first of all, this is not a Deadeye build, so you won't be running around at 150 to 170% movement speed. However, the mapping experience is quite fast compared to some of the other builds that I've seen this league. So just bear in mind that it's not a Deadeye build, it is an off-meta build, so just keep that in mind. Second of all, the clear is really good, and the build is fun to play, which is obviously the most important thing to me. However, if you are wanting to do bossing, you need to make sure that you're able to dodge the boss mechanics, because in many cases, if you're hit by a large boss hit, you will die. So you need to make sure that you position yourself correctly in boss fights, and you need to make sure that you have enough currency to get this build started. So I'll have a list of things that you will need to make sure that you have before you get started and decide to play this build. These are mandatory. Please make sure you have these, or the build will not feel as good as it should. So let's first start off with going over why we are playing Gemling Legionnaire. So I touched on this briefly in my first video. The fact that Galvanic Shards got changed in this patch. We have fewer bolts, but we now have much higher damage scaling per level. And the great thing about Gemling Legionnaire is with this Ascendancy node, Motoric Implants, we get +2 to all skills with a dex requirement, which helps us scale our damage. In addition, Galvanic Shards quality scales the number of projectiles rather than the number of bolts compared to the previous patch. So however you only have one bolt in your crossbow, you're able to quality the gem and get more projectiles, which means more beams. Galvanic Shards, the skill, shoots out fragments. When these fragments collide with an enemy, they shoot out a beam, and it's the beam that helps us with our clear. So predominantly, it's going to be the beams that are doing the clearing for us, so just keep that in mind when you're checking your tooltip DPS. Touching back at the Ascendancy points and going over why Gemling again, we obviously spoke about the +2 to level requirements and the quality. You also get gem studded, which is a decent node in the sense that it allows you to get crit reduction, so you don't take any damage from critical strikes, which is a big source of one-shots in the end game. So it's a really nice thing to have, as well as the 40% less movement speed penalty from using skills while moving. It's really nice with crossbow skills because they do slow you down quite a lot. If you balance your gem colors like I have here, 16 red and 16 green, then you can actually benefit from all three of these. You could even get the reduced mana cost if you had enough blue support gems, but for now I'm just settling on the red and the greens balancing up. And lastly, we've got integrated efficiency, which is just giving us more damage per red gem, more skill speed per green gem, and crit chance per blue gem. The crit chance is a bit of a do nothing, but the skill speed and the extra damage is really nice. So that is the reason we are playing Gemling. Let's go over the skills very quickly before we take a look at the tree. So when you're mapping, you're predominantly going to be using your Galvanic Shards, which I have on my left click. So you just shoot your left click like this, and when it hits packs of monsters, typically they will just explode thanks to Herald of Thunder. So if we start by having a look at all of our skills, you'll see I have crossbow shot here, and I have multiple blue support gems. These gems do not affect your damage in any way. The only reason we have these gems here is to help us balance our strengths and dex gems. So these gems are doing absolutely nothing for me, but it's more for just you to know that if you maybe don't have a 6 link or you only have 5 links and you need to get your gems balanced, you can take these out and put red or green gems in to make sure that your strength and your dex gems are balanced. Here's our bread and butter skill in maps, the Galvanic Shards. So just going over this skill, you'll notice that I have a level 20 skill gem with a 23% quality. I'll go over why you want a 23% quality in a short moment, but you'll notice that the effects from quality are 4 more fragments per shot, which is really great in terms of clear because we're getting more beams, and the more beams, more clear. We're using Iron's Metal as our ammunition skill. It's normally important to run some form of an ammunition skill, such as Nimble Reload. In this case, we're using Iron's Metal, which is excellent in maps. If you kill a mob, you have a 35% chance to load a bolt into all of your crossbow skills. When you're doing high dense content, you're basically firing as if you never need to reload. It's a really nice quality of life gem, so I wouldn't skimp out on this, but if you can't afford it, then go with something like Nimble Reload. Ricochet support is really nice in terms of clear. Many people use Fork, which is also okay, but I've found that the clear from Ricochet 3 is a lot better. It reads projectiles from supported skills pierce all their targets, modifiers granting additional projectiles, instead calls projectiles from supported skills to chain an additional time from terrain per projectile that they would have gained. So it's just helping us scale our clear essentially. Unlike Fork, we don't get any loss of damage by using Ricochet. So Ricochet feels really good in maps. However, if you're wanting to do simulacrums, I would recommend swapping Fork in rather than Ricochet. I've had more success using Fork in simulacrums. We're using Defy. Defy says attack damage with hits is lucky while you're surrounded, and insufficient mana doesn't prevent the use of skills. So what that means is you can continue to cast any of your abilities that have this gem, even if you don't have any mana, which is a great benefit, along with the fact that damage with your hits is lucky. Now, for those of you who don't know, lucky means that when you deal damage, the number of damage you deal is rolled twice, and the higher number is picked. So if you have a look at the range of damage on Galvanic Shards, in particular the beam, the damage range rolls from 13,648 to 69,521. So you can imagine that is a giant variance. Rolling that number twice and picking the higher number equates to roughly 30% effective DPS. So it's quite a big damage boost. Elemental Armament 2 just gives us 25% more elemental damage, and more is multiplicative, which is amazing. And then a contentious one, Rakiata's Flow. This is really expensive, just be warned. I think at the time of this video it is around 22 to 23 divines if I'm not mistaken. This allows your hits to treat enemy monsters as inverted, which means if you shoot a monster that has 75 elemental resistance, that resistance will become negative 75% resistance. The reason that is so good is because you don't need to invest in penetration on the tree, because you cannot penetrate negative resistances anymore. That is it for basically for mapping. In terms of single target, we use shock burst rounds with lightning attunement. Supported skills gain extra lightning damage and they deal less cold and fire, which is fine. We're only really concerned about the lightning damage. Elemental Armament again. Elemental Focus. Defy 2 for the lucky hits. And rapid attacks. If you're going to do a boss, I would recommend swapping Rakiata's Flow for rapid attacks, as this gives you the penetration you need in order to do the bosses a bit easier. If you don't have any penetration, the bosses will feel quite bad. But if you can't afford Rakiata's Flow, I will show you what you need to change in the tree, so don't worry about that. Shock burst rounds works essentially if the target you are shooting is shocked, it releases a pulse which does mega damage, as you can see from the damage numbers over here. So that is going to be the main source of our single target. In terms of auras we're running Wind Dancer. And you're going to run Wind Dancer with Blind 2 support, Maim, Knockback, Close Combat, Magnified Area. Herald of Thunder, you're going to run with Elemental Focus, Lightning Attunement, Elemental Armament, Culling Strike 2, and Lightning Mastery. We also run mortar cannon. You don't have to use mortar cannon if you don't like the totem playstyle. The only reason we use this is to place it down. It can be used to distract enemies, and it shoots out a voltaic grenade. A voltaic grenade helps us apply an ailment called electrocute, which is kind of like a stun. It's very, very helpful in busy and compact maps. So you can either just use voltaic grenade, or you can use mortar cannon. I like mortar cannon. It's just a bit easier to use for me. We use this with short fuse, urgent totems, and life tap. Emergency reload is only used for your single target. I'll go into the single target rotation in a moment. We use this with cooldown recovery 2, life tap, efficiency 2, and prolonged duration 2. Stormcaller arrow is the ability we use on weapon set 2. I'll explain how that works. Essentially, in Path of Exile 2, you can have 2 weapon sets. So you can see in weapon set 2, I've got a bow and quiver. And in weapon set 1, I've got my crossbow. This allows me to switch between a bow and a crossbow instantly. So you're using Stormcaller arrow to apply shock. If you read the skill, converts physical to lightning damage, 58% increased shock duration. And then we scale up the shock magnitude, which means you shoot a couple of arrows at a boss, it gets it primed, and then you switch to your shock burst rounds for big damage. This we use with lightning exposure, shock, defy 2, potent exposure, and overcharge. Once you have your weapon set 2 equipped, make sure you come over here and you unselect 1 and make sure that 2 is selected. And for all of your other abilities, you just want to make sure that you have both selected. Voltaic Mark is another one used for single target. You apply Voltaic Mark, mark a target, making them more susceptible to being shocked. When the marked target dies, there's an explosion, so you can use this in maps if you want to. I have it on my side mouse button and I occasionally press it in big packs. It just helps create a bit of an explosion. And we use this with prolonged duration, life tap, lightning mastery, and overcharge. And Ghost Dance, I will get into in a moment. You don't have to use this. I will get into when you would use Ghost Dance in a moment. But if you don't use Ghost Dance, then feel free to use Deadly Herald and feel free to use Precision 2. We have Precision 2 in Ghost Dance currently. You can swap out one of the supports, maybe Culling Strike, for example, out of Herald of Thunder. And you can add in, you can swap out Lightning Mastery, and you can swap out Culling Strike, and you can insert Precision 2 and Deadly Herald, and that will use up the rest of your spirit. To go over the damage rotations in maps, you're just shooting Galvanic Shards, you're proccing Herald of Thunder, there's Thunderbolts being called down all over the place, and all of the mobs are just going to die. It's really comfortable and really fun. In terms of single target, as you approach the boss, don't forget to swap your Rakiata's Flow if you have it. You want to swap them like this. What you're going to do is, as the boss is talking, you'll put down your totem to help apply electrocute. You're then going to walk around and shoot arrows, and you're going to use your voltaic mark. So the boss will spawn, voltaic mark, shoot your arrows, and then what you need to do is make sure that you load your shock burst rounds. So because we're using weapon set 2, you won't instantly be able to just shoot shock burst rounds, so you're going to need to press the button to load your shock burst rounds like this, and you'll be good to go. So you drop the totem, voltaic mark, move around and shoot arrows. You'll be able to tell under the boss's health bar what it looks like when they're shocked, and then you're going to shoot your shock burst rounds. When your ammo is low, like this, you push emergency reload for your emergency reload, which will also amplify the damage. You just need to be careful, as I said at the start of the video, when you're doing bosses, please be careful of physical max hits. We have a very low physical max hit capacity, so if you're hit by a large slam, you are going to die. However, for mapping, the build feels really good and really comfortable and safe. Let's go over our gear. So you'll see we have this crossbow here. This is not required. It is a big quality of life crossbow, and there is a full crafting guide available on my channel if you go and have a look at a few videos past. We've got flat lightning damage, damages extra lightning, adds fire damage, loads 2 additional bolts, chance to gain onslaught and +6 of all attacks. In an ideal world, the best prefix you would want on your crossbow would be tier 1 flat physical damage, tier 1 percentage physical damage, and tier 1 flat lightning damage. However, it's very hard to get this deterministically on a craft. So if you are going to craft, or if you have a crossbow of your own, you need to prioritize percentage physical damage, flat physical damage, and then lightning damage, flat lightning damage. And if you can't get those, then any other flat damage is always great. In terms of suffixes, there's nothing really too important other than the +6 to attack skills. Why you want attack skills rather than projectile skills? Because Wind Dancer is classified as an attack skill, so is Herald of Thunder, so it helps boost the damage. That's ideally what you would want on your crossbow. We have loads 2 additional bolts as it's a massive quality of life increase. You'll see we've got this on a Gemini crossbow base, and the reason for that is because the implicit has loads an additional bolt. So this essentially gives us 4 bolts per round, which is great for clearing, and you don't really have to worry about reloading much. And even when you do, the reload speed is about 0.5 seconds, so it's really not that bad. And you're going to be proccing Iron's Medal in maps often anyway, so you're not even really going to feel the reloading. We are attribute stacking, so of course Hands of Wisdom and Action are amazing because we're getting a tremendous amount of flat damage in terms of lightning damage through our intelligence scaling, and attack speed through dexterity scaling. So this is a must-have and is really useful. We're using the Constricting Command helmet, and I'll explain why in a moment. Basically, this helmet means that we are always surrounded. So if you remember earlier in the video, I touched on Defy 2. The reason Defy 2 is so good is because with the Constricting Command helmet, we are permanently surrounded. And because we're permanently surrounded, all our damage is lucky, and we don't have to worry about mana, running out of mana when we use supported skills. So that's the Constricting Command. In terms of rings, I've got a Calandra's Touch. You don't need this. You can just use 2 rings. What you're looking for in rings is flat physical damage, flat lightning damage, and then a prefix of your choice. In my case, I've chosen life, but you can add rarity, you can have evasion. The most important things in your prefixes is flat damage. You could even go triple flat damage. You could go physical, cold, or fire, and then lightning if you wanted to. And in terms of suffixes, you want all elemental resistances, and then 2 tier 1 attributes. So in my case, I've gone with intelligence and dex. You can go with intelligence and strength. It's entirely up to you. But I would go with those rather than 13 to all attributes. I just feel like scaling the 2 at a larger magnitude is more beneficial. So focus on flat damage on your rings, as well as resistances and attributes. Astromentus is giving us a tremendous amount of attributes as well to get this build online. We allocate pure power because this gives us 2% increased lightning damage per 10 intelligence. You need to make sure that you get one that is decently rolled, because a decent rare amulet will beat a badly rolled Astromentus most of the time. So please make sure that you get one that is at least over 100 attributes while quality is applied in order to get the best value. Looking at our chest, my chest is quite bad. So what I've decided to settle for on my chest is flat evasion, life, hybrid evasion, and then in terms of suffixes, 2 resistances, and gain deflection equal to evasion rating. In an ideal world, you will have 3 evasion prefixes that are tier 1 so that you get as much evasion as possible on your chest. And then you have the deflection rating suffix as well as 2 high tier resistances. You do want to craft this on a Corsair coat, or if you're buying, you want to buy this on a Corsair coat because of the implicit reduced movement speed penalty while moving. Is really great, because if you notice how we move while we shoot with a crossbow, there's almost no movement penalty. So please try and get this on a Corsair coat. So again, in terms of stat priority, as much evasion as you possibly can fit on the chest, and then gain deflection equal to evasion and resistances that you need. In terms of belt, I've gone with an ingenuity. Mine's corrupted with dexterity. This is not compulsory, it just helps me gain extra stats and helps me boost my flat damage. You can use a normal rare belt if you need to fix your res. If you have a lot of currency, Headhunter is fantastic, so feel free to use a Headhunter if that's what you'd like to do. And then in terms of boots, we've got hybrid boots, so evasion and energy shield boots. I've got life, evasion, energy shield hybrid, and then movement speed. You definitely want movement speed on this build, so please make sure you get that. 2 T1 resistances, and then dexterity. The dexterity is not that important. It's obviously nice to have, but you could fix your resistances on the boots as well. So you could have a triple resistance suffix. You could have gain evasion as deflection as a suffix. There's many different options. The main things, however, are making sure you get as much evasion and energy shield as possible, and making sure that you're getting at least some resistances on your boots, because the resistances are quite hard to fix on this build. So that summarizes everything we've got here. Health flask and mana flask are not of much importance. In terms of charms, we're using a poison charm because we have very low chaos resistance. This will help us with survivability. We're using a thawing charm because the thawing charm helps us if you get frozen after opening up a strong box. It can save your life. And then just a charm that gives us immunity to bleeding. You don't necessarily have to use this unique charm. Any charm that gives you immunity to bleeding will be fine. Let's have a look at the passive tree. We've already discussed our ascendancy choices here. So you're going to start at this point in the tree and make your way in path down. You'll notice how these are in red. This is because they are being used in weapon set 1. If I push my weapon swap button, you'll notice how they go away in color and the green part lights up, and vice versa. The reason for this is because we can take advantage of our weapon set points, because on the bow, all we really care about is shock magnitude, whereas on weapon set 1, we care about being fast and doing a lot of damage and having good evasion. So over here, we've got natural immunity. This is giving us ailment threshold per dex, which is helping us not die to ignite and shock, etc. We've got adrenaline rush, which is giving us movement speed if we've killed. And then we've got a node here and a node here. These are all of the surrounded nodes, so if you read them all, you get insane benefits. And because of our constricting command helmet, we benefit from these buffs all the time. So that's the reason we use the helmet. We get a load of value over here as well in terms of extra damage, survivability, regen. So it's definitely not something you want to skip out on. We are using a time lost emerald here in the center as well, with increased effect of small passives, so that's these here, as well as increased lightning damage, evasion, and attack speed. The only real important thing here, if you do decide to use a time lost emerald, is the increased effect of the small passives, because if you have a look, it says 30% increased attack damage while surrounded. If we take the jewel out, it becomes 25. And you see we've got a number of these jewels here, so it's a lot of effective increased damage just from one jewel. Same goes here for the surrounded nodes. Over here I've got a Megalomaniac. Megalomaniac is not required for the build. It's just really nice to have. There's a couple of options you have. In my case, I've got recover max life on kill, which is obviously important for the build. There's a couple of different sources you can get it. I'll go into that in a moment. And then the Great Boar, which lets us gain a bit of extra life for our dexterity, which is excellent because we're already stacking dex. And it's also giving us some extra stun threshold. But again, not required. You can replace this with any jewel of your choice. We take Gem Enthusiast, which is giving us maximum life because we've got more than 10 red gems. And it's also giving us 5% movement speed because we've got more than 10 green gems. Over here, 7% increased attributes. Over here, Jack of all trades, which is giving us increased damage per our 5 of our lowest attribute. You want to try and keep your attributes as close together as possible. In an ideal world, I would have higher strength, because the higher strength is going to make sure that we get the full benefit out of Jack of all trades. If you see, if I unallocate this, we lose quite a lot of damage. One of the issues that some people have complained about on the build is the damage to single target and bosses. So I do like to take Giant Slayer, gives us extra damage with hits against rare and unique enemies. You'll notice that we've also got increased attack speed here, and then extra attack damage against rare and unique enemies here. Not entirely required, but it is a nice quality of life thing to have. Over here, we've got a controlled metamorphosis diamond. You'll notice it says only affects passives in the medium ring. This can roll between very small and massive, so please read the first line of text and make sure it says medium ring. You're going to want to put it in here, and this basically lets us put allocate any points that are in this giant circle. The reason this is so good is because it lets us take run and gun and spray and pray, which give us a lot of damage, reduce movements penalty, and also a chance to fire 2 extra projectiles. We've already touched on why projectiles are so good. But another massive bonus about this here is this over here called the Cunning Fox. The Cunning Fox gives 5% quality to all skills. And if you take into account 2% here and 2% here, that gives us 9% quality. And if you get a corrupted skill gem with 23% quality, that pushes the gem quality over 30%. So that is why in this case, you'll see we're getting 23% from the gem and 19 from the tree, which means instead of 3 fragments per shot, we're getting 4 fragments per shot, as well as on Herald of Thunder, you're going to get an extra 4 lightning bolts strike the targets of your next 4 attacks instead of 2. So this is an amazing jewel to have. We get a ton of value out of it. Over here, we've got some deflection rating scaling. Deflection and evasion are your primary source of defense, so we need to make sure that we invest in it. We take Falcon Dive here, which is giving us 1% attack speed per 250 accuracy rating. So if you don't know, dexterity gives you accuracy. So by stacking dexterity, we're getting accuracy, and by getting accuracy, we're getting attack speed. Over here for weapon set 2, we're just scaling shock duration and shock magnitude. Shock magnitude is important because the higher magnitude of shock, the more lightning damage that the target will take. Over here, we've got a Heart of the Well Diamond. There are a number of different combinations of these that you can get. The main stats you're looking for on these are gain damage as extra. Obviously, the best would be lightning. But if you can get one that has gain damage as extra cold or chaos or fire, and you can get 2 of those, it ends up being quite a lot of extra damage. I touched earlier that you need gain life on kill. You can gain that on one of these jewels too. Another very useful node is increased evasion rating from equipped body armor. So look for any combination that you might like, but the main ones you wanted to look out for are the damage as extra, the evasion from equipped body armor, and gain life on kill. This node is allocated thanks to the Megalomaniac, so if you are wondering why this is allocated and there's no points in here, that is why. We've got Coming Calamity, which is giving us damage while we have our Herald of Thunder, so it's a lot of extra damage for free. We've got deflection damage prevention here. As I mentioned earlier, deflection is a big key to our defense. Over here we've got the Winter Owl, which is giving us evasion per intelligence, and we're also gaining accuracy thanks to our intelligence, which is effectively giving us more attack speed thanks to Falcon Dive, so we're double dipping. And then as you move over here, we've got Falcon Technique, which is 1% attack speed per 25 dex, which also synergizes with the gloves, so we're getting a crazy amount of attack speed. And some of you might be wondering what this is. So this is called a Heroic Tragedy. What a Heroic Tragedy does is it can roll a number of different names on it, so you need to make sure the one that you're getting says Olroth. By putting this gem in here, it transforms this keystone, which is Walker of the Wilds, into a keystone called Knightly Tenets, which means gain no inherent bonus from intelligence, and the inherent bonus from intelligence is 2 maximum mana per 1 int, and we're now going to turn our intelligence into evasion rating, which is absolutely fantastic because mana does nothing for us. Since we are using Defy, we already don't have to worry about mana costs, so by turning our int into evasion, we are scaling up our defenses, and it feels really good. As you can see up here, we're just scaling up shock effect on our weapon tree too. So you do want to take this and allocate it into your weapon set number 2. If you do not have enough for Rakiata's flow, as I said earlier, there's penetration nodes here, so you'll just need to sacrifice a few points and take some penetration nodes. Don't worry about lightning rod. Your damage with hits is always going to be lucky because you're using Defy too, so it would just be here. And then if you need extra, you can always path up here and there's just more penetration in the tree. That about summarizes the tree, as well as the gear and the skills. Some other questions people may ask is, can you play this on Witchunter or Tactician? Yes, you can. I just feel that the best way to scale the damage on the build and the best quality of life comes from playing it on a Gemling. I feel like Witchunter is a more budget-friendly version, and if you have a look on my channel, the first time I tried out the skill was on a Witchunter, so if you're interested in a Witchunter tree, you're welcome to go and have a look at that. The last few things that I want to touch on is in terms of min-maxing the build. So if you want to invest more currency and push this build as far as you possibly can, there are a few things that we've tested. Obviously, the negative chaos res is not ideal. So we have tested a chaos inoculation version of the build where you take chaos inoculation up here, and then you would also take spectral ward, which is giving energy shield per evasion. Personally, I feel like CI is maybe not the best thing to go in this build, but what I would highly recommend is going Hybrid Evasion Energy Shield. So what you would do is you would get a chest with as much evasion as you possibly can, and boots with evasion and energy shield. And what you would then do is get yourself a Megalomaniac jewel like this, but instead of the ones that I have, you would get one that would give you spectral ward, and that way you're going to gain a lot of energy shield, especially if you have a really good chest piece. So you take that and you're then able to fit in Ghost Dance like I have here, and Ghost Dance allows you to recover energy shield when you take a hit. So in the off chance that you don't dodge a hit, or you don't evade a hit, or don't deflect a hit, you're going to get hit and your energy shield is going to start recharging. It provides an excellent buffer due to the lack of chaos resistance we have, and you will definitely feel it in maps. It feels a lot better in terms of survivability. Another thing I would say is, if you can't afford a good Megalomaniac, there is a cheap way to go around that, and that's by using a From Nothing diamond with Eternal Youth. If you take this and you put this into your build, you'll notice that there's another circle that appears here, and this will allow you to take Spectral Ward, and I would also take Electrifying Days, which is why you can see I've got 2 skill points there. Obviously this is not an ideal way, but if you are on a budget, then you definitely can do this. It's going to boost your survivability by quite a lot. So that about summarizes the build, guys. It's a really fun build. Many people have already tried it for themselves and have really enjoyed it, so I'd strongly encourage you to give this a go if you're looking for something fun, or if you're bored of the delayed damage from a mortar tactician, for example, then I'd absolutely recommend this, as long as you just keep in mind that you need to be a little bit careful when you do your bossing. As a side note, we do have a Discord that you can join in the description below with a bunch of other Gemling players. We're always happy to answer questions, and we would love to have you in there, and we can discuss improvements to the build. I can answer any questions you might have, and so on and so forth. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a great day, and hope you drop a bunch of divines.